So this has been a really hectic, active, positive week in New York. Things happening constantly, and people have had to either go nonstop to events, as I see many of you have, or miss some very important activities. So we really appreciate your coming. This legal update is going to take just a few minutes. I'm not, even though it's from 1995 to now, it's not going to be like that. And also, let me just say a word that I'm not a lawyer. By the way, if you're sitting in the, if my voice starts fading, raise your hand, please, and then I'll know you can't hear me. Christine in the back, you can't hear me too good. Okay, I'll start again. I'll try it this way. But please keep doing it. Remind me if you can't hear me. Okay, so in 1995, Mumia was, in 1982, Mumia was sentenced to death, and he was, that was the penalty, that he was found guilty and sentenced to death. There was actually, the appeals process went on, and in 1995, Sadiq just referred to the fact that that's when the first execution date was set, 13 years after his trial, when the appeals process was not even quite over. The judge moved quickly, and the governor, to sentence him to death. The world movement really was unbelievably strong at that point, and we managed to stop the execution, with people, literally millions of people around the world at all levels of public power and grassroots and so on. In 2001, the first crack in their case happened, and many people started saying, victory, victory, we're winning, we won. And it was very much a false alarm of victory. The case had just gone to federal court. You know, this was a state case. It went to federal court, and a judge ruled that the instructions to the jury that had been given on the issue of sentence, not on guilt, that everybody all the way along, from beginning to end, has said guilty, 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 guilty. No matter all the evidence, no matter all the obvious contradictions, they've always stuck to guilty. But there was this crack in 2001 where the judge says, because the instructions to the jury were incorrect and implied, I won't go into the details of it, but at any rate, Mumia should be given the benefit of the doubt, as though had the instructions been given correctly, he might have been given life in prison without parole. So since 2001, Mumia was technically under life in prison without parole, even though he never left death row. You know, Mumia was on, a lot of people got confused for that. So we thought that decision was partly to disarm the movement. A lot of people dropped out, et cetera, et cetera. For the first time this year, in January of this year, the prosecution, I'm skipping a lot of steps, but the prosecution had appealed the decision of life in prison without parole. And using a very weird case of a Nazi, a murderer, a guy who couldn't be more the opposite of Mumia, they said since he was now going to get execution as compared to life in prison without parole, this same precedent should apply to Mumia. And therefore, the question of execution should be reconsidered by the next lower court from the Supreme Court, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. So the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in January of this year that we've already known there was no new trial, no new, everything has been closed in the case since 2 years ago. But now they have become more aggressive. Now they also want to kill Mumia. And when I say they, it's not by chance that a new hit movie, that done by a black man, by the way, that totally presents the prosecution's version of what happened and describes Mumia as a crazed cop killer. And I hear it's a very bad movie, actually, too. 2 of our people went to see it. But this movie came out, check this out, on the same day as they announced this hearing that's going to be taking place on November 9th in Philadelphia, in which the issue of execution is going to be considered. These things, just like August 17th in 1995, Marcus Garvey's birthday, was not an accident that they picked that day. It's not an accident that on the day that a new hit piece, a horrible film, attacking Mumia and the widow, this vicious widow who has no compassion in her heart. And, you know, we would feel sorry for her and feel some compassion for her if she wasn't so bloodthirsty. This is not a victim who believes in justice. This is a victim. She's been asked many times, what if you're wrong? She says, oh, no, I want him killed. I want him killed. So the film is totally about her, from what I understand, and the prosecution's version at any rate. So now we have Mumia literally in the most serious, dangerous position in the history of this case. And this case, as you know, has now been going on for almost 29 years. And the reason it's more dangerous than ever is because it's gone through all the levels. You know, we've had appeals. It's gone through every single judge that has looked at this case, has outrageously decided to ignore the evidence of Mumia's innocence. Every single judge. And the Third Circuit decided to ignore it and violated every precedent in the past and all principles of justice. So with all that, now they figure we're not going to settle for life in prison without parole. The Fraternal Order of Police is fighting tooth and nail for execution. Philadelphia has a black mayor, a black DA who said if the case came before him, there's no question in his mind that he would seek the death penalty, and this so-called black filmmaker. Their base of support, the film was done by a funded by a right-wing Republican, and mainly pushed by the Fraternal Order of Police. So on November 9th at 2 p.m., how many people in this room are going to be in Philadelphia saying, no way? I want to see the hands up again, please. Free Mumia, free Mumia. And we say, brick by brick, wall by wall, we're going to free Mumia Abu Jamal. Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're going to free Mumia Abu Jamal. So with that in mind, this is the context. We planned tonight's events and Saturdays way before we knew about November 9th. But the gods were with us so that we are actually in a position to organize people for November 9th, both tonight and on Saturday. So please buy a ticket for Saturday, get ready for November 9th, and listen to all this stuff tonight about the international perspective on police brutality and the death penalty, because that's what Mumia's case is about, and that's what this system is trying to apply to so many, many young people of color.
I just wanted to say in terms of that movie that was shown, there were 400 white folks that showed up at that movie that the Pillsbury Doughboy, this Negro, made, and 4 people were black. That was the district attorney, that we can name, the mayor, Nutter, and Seth Williams, and I'm trying to think, the head of the NAACP, Jerry Mondesire, was supporting this film that calls for the execution of Mumia. I first want to introduce a brother here, Brother Malcolm Shabazz. I got a phone call one day from Muslim brothers in Comstock, told me you were there, and they told me they were going to look out for you. And I'm going to call the brother's name because he was tortured severely up in Ellenville. I had a videotape. He was naked and they beat him, kicked him. He was chained from feet to hands. And he told me that he heard that these guards wanted to make a reputation off of you. He called me up and told me to call Ilyasha to get you out of that area, Comstock, because they call it the Gladiator School. So I'm glad to see you here, brother, and you know, we love you definitely. And I'm glad those brothers looked out for you, and I understand you're going to give us some words of solidarity here tonight.
Thank you. My name is Malcolm Shabazz. I'm the grandson of Malcolm X. It's an honor to be here tonight in support of Mumia Abu Jamal. Me and JR, the Minister of Information for the POCC, Prisoners of Conscience Committee, just came back from visiting him about 1 hour outside of Pittsburgh. it was a little difficult for me going back into the jail. You know, I did about a total of 6 years in the concentration camps, you know, within the belly of the beast. And what came to mind when we first went in there, I remember myself not being on death row, but being in super maximum security prison, and people coming to visit me, and the emotions that I would go through just to get down there to the floor. You know, when we went to see him, he has to sit behind a glass, and you know, when we speak to him, we have to speak through these little holes. And before he gets in there, he has to get strip searched, and after he leaves, he has to get strip searched again, which is wild because there's no type of contact. It's just not possible. But you know, I wondered how the brother would look, what his appearance would be like when we went in there. And you know, those who stand for nothing fall for anything. And the brother was standing as tall as ever. Matter of fact, most of the time he stood up. He didn't even sit down. He was standing up through most of the visit for hours, you know, talking to us. And he's looking healthy. He's revolutionary spirited, military minded. The brother's real strong. The majority of the time, we didn't even really touch on his case or ask him how were they treating him in prison. He was very lively and animated. We spoke on a lot of cultural issues. We spoke a lot about Tupac. We spoke about Bob Marley and various different artists out there. We spoke about the various different forms there are to raising the awareness and consciousness of the people, whether it be through art, spoken word, hip hop, rap. But all these things have a positive and a negative, and we have to utilize them in a positive light. One of the things I told the brother, I relayed one of my own experiences coming home from prison and being on parole. And, you know, I got violated on parole for being a half an hour late on my curfew coming home from school. And it was, you know, I had my schedule, my school schedule, and I could show and prove that I was coming from point A, going to point B. It takes X amount of time to get there and so forth. And yet they still violated me. They gave me a year and sent me back to Attica. And when I told him this, I said, you know, but once I had gotten, and there's many incidences like this that I went through, and it's like they had a leash around my neck and they could yank it back at any given time. I didn't have to commit a crime to get sent back. And once I got that chain off my neck, you know, I was able to be more productive and more constructive out here in society. And one of the things he said to me, he said, well, they don't have your mind. You know, they haven't shackled your mind. And, you know, it's clear to see from this brother that they haven't shackled his.
This is Brother JR that did Operation Small Axe.
Excuse me, just one more thing I'd like to say. It's very important for us to keep our political prisoners in mind because oftentimes, majority of the people take the position of out of sight, out of mind, you know, but we should take the position of absence only makes the heart grow fonder. We shouldn't forget about these brothers because they're not incarcerated. They're not you know, in these concentration camps for gangbanging or selling drugs or contributing towards the deterioration of our community. You know, they're actually in there because they were contributing towards the upliftment of our people. So we should never forget about them.
Thank you, Malcolm. It's really wonderful to have you here. Very, very exciting and inspiring. I want to say a little bit about JR, for those who don't know JR. Some of us met him a few years back. He's been in New York quite a few times, so we met him in California. But JR's work recently in Oakland around the killing of Oscar Grant by the cop, Messerling is his name, has been really outstanding. And obviously he didn't do it alone, but his role in it, he's obviously been a leader in that struggle. And for those of us who've seen the struggle against brutality in New York go round and round in circles for many, many years, this is a film and a struggle that's worth learning from. We have a lot to learn from this brother and what he's done. And this film is also, we've shown it. We showed it about 2 months ago, I think it was, maybe 6 weeks ago. And it's a wonderful film. So I just want to let you know to tune in to this brother's message. He's on KPFA, he's on Block Radio. And when he says he comes to New York, I try to organize an event. So that's how much people in the coalition know. No matter what we're doing, if JR is coming to town, we try to organize an event. So.
Well, first I want to thank all of you for coming and supporting.